right back at it. Talked about science and, evidence and trying to figure everything out with evidence and all the things you see. Um, Sometimes you just get older and you know things, you've seen things, you've witnessed things, you've gone through things. Um, your BS meter gets more in tune. You know what I mean? And people say things, and you're just like, yeah, I don't think so. And there's some people that they can, I think they convince themselves to try and convince you that they're 100% right. And there are some people who are so confident in what they say that they'd make great car salesmen. Yeah, you can't buy everything. I want evidence. I want to know the truth. I want evidence, just like anybody else. Unfortunately, it's really hard to find concrete evidence on a lot of things. So, like I said, I watch these archaeologists, digging things up and trying to prove that the trying to prove the Bible stories, and that's what they're on. Some of them are just trying to prove the stories are right because they love that book so much. Others kind of take a scientific approach, and this is what struck me with one person, and he had read the ancient texts of Genesis and the story of the Anunnaki coming here looking for gold, and they made human beings to be a slave race, and the good scientists are the ones who are like, well, there's got to be evidence. If this is true, there's got to be evidence of it, right? And that's what I appreciate about the archaeologists that are trying to see if the stories are true in the Bible, and if it's the same thing with this other guy. He was like, okay, there's got to be something. So he does Google Earth, and he's looking for all this stuff in Africa because apparently that's where a lot of the gold mines were at, or they were digging up gold, these Anunnaki. And lo and behold, he found a bunch of really weird structures, and they were like circular in shape, and then they had lines like a road, two lines parallel to each other, and they were connecting all these circles. And here's what's crazy: as he started off, he found a couple, he found 10, dozen, then he's up to 100, then he's up to 1,000, then he's up to 100,000. He's like, this stuff is everywhere. These structures are all over the place, hundreds of thousands of them. And then later on, to make a long story short, he was down there investigating them, and he found gold mines all over the place. Um, but when he was investigating these circle structures, he said it didn't make sense. And yeah, you can read his book. What's his name? Michael Tellinger, I think. And it was something about the stones and the gold. His book is called, I think. Um, Good read. You check it out. Um, but he was looking for evidence of this so-called group of people that were like trying to extract gold off of this planet and made human beings for their slave race. Um, so there's a lot of evidence. Well, what's even crazier is when he started investigating these circles, the things that he was finding was like, this is weird. And he asked the locals. Nobody knew who made them, and then people were trying to come up with theories. Oh, they were, they made these structures so that they could put their animals in there at night and protect them, and from other animals, and then they tried to explain that the road was for them to, take their animals out and then drive them down this lane and they, you know, they used it as kind of like a road for their animals. Well, he gets down there and he's checking these things out, and he's like, well, there's problems with these theories. One is who runs their animals down roads just to go from point A to point B. Usually they were letting their animals graze the whole day because that's what they do, and they were just there to protect them. And the circles were the ones that were like, doesn't make any sense. There's no doorways in these things. And there's inside there are like dividing walls, you know, like a wheel. And then there's other little circles that aren't like, they're not symmetrical. They're like, there's a little circle here and there's a little circle there, you know. And it was just, their design was weird. They're not perfect circles. Human beings like to make things in perfect squares, perfect circles, just the way they kind of think. If they're building something that's like a hut, unless there's a specific design that they like are doing. But each one of these was all different, and they started moving around these stones, and these stones are all kind of like they're almost shaped like a big tooth. They're kind of rounded. What would be a good? They almost look like um, the canine teeth of like a, I don't know, crocodile. I guess it'd be, I don't know. Yeah, crocodiles are kind of rounded teeth. They're like a cone shape. But they started moving these around so that they could get inside because, like I said, there was no doorways. So they noticed right away they were ringing like a bell. They like every time they would move them and like set them down, they would ring like a bell. And then he kind of got to thinking, you know, maybe this is something different. This isn't what I thought it was. There's something going on here. This is about sound. And with sound, you have frequency. You know, he got inside and his GPS didn't work because he was like, I don't know if he was trying to take GPS coordinates of each one of these circles, but the GPS didn't work inside of those circles. There was enough energy going on there that it disrupted the signal. So he noticed that it was warm inside these circles. So he took temperature readings. And I don't remember exactly. I think he said 23 degrees Celsius outside the circle. And then it was like way, like more than double that inside the circle. So he's kind of intrigued. And then he decided to have somebody else come down and do some checking out this stuff. And they were doing like frequency. They were checking frequencies around this stuff, you know, like they were ringing the bells and trying to check out the frequencies. And so not sure if somebody's here or not, but so this guy's taking frequencies, and all these circles have different frequencies. There's different frequencies in different parts, but it was some of them were off the charts, like crazy. You have to read the book, but like I said, later on he got to snooping around some more, and lo and behold, there's gold mines everywhere. It's like, well, maybe there's something to this story. It's not concrete proof, but it is evidence that points towards maybe there's something to these stories. There's some merit to them. Same thing with the Bible stories. You know, these archaeologists are running around and they're finding, like, I think they found Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were like doing research and checking this stuff out, and you know, they're just going off of what was in the Bible for kind of like a map to point them in the right direction. They knew that Sodom and Gomorrah were around the Dead Sea, and what's funny is there's a lot of salt there. There's salt pillars everywhere. There's just salt. So the story about the salt was maybe not 100% honest. You could definitely look at some of these pillars and say, oh, that looks like a human being. It's just a salt pillar. And some of them do kind of look a little weird. And there's evidence that something did happen there, and like somebody was trying to do some archaeology, geology type stuff, and they found evidence of something happened there. And of course, every time there's a like intense heat in an area or a possible like explosion, the first thing they think of is asteroids, comets, whatever, an impact. And supposedly, I think they said Abraham, somebody was watching this happen. And then, of course, Lot, I think it was Lot, and his people were there, and they were, telling the story. Here's what's funny is there's also a story in the original version that talks about Lord Enlil being upset that there was people who were, I don't think he said sinful. I think how did they say it? They were doing evil things. And so Enlil gave somebody permission to go nuke them. And there's a story about how they brought nukes from their planet, and they were never meant to be used, and they weren't supposed to be used. And somebody, like Lord Enki, hid them, and somebody told Lord Enlil where they were at, because Lord Enlil got in trouble, and he got like kicked out of the God's place for a while, and then he reconciled, came back, but then it was too late. He knew where the nukes were at, and he used them. This is the thing is, Lord Enlil, you're going to find out he's not a very nice guy with all the stories. But anyways, back to it. Again, you got a lot of evidence to point that there is some merit to these stories in the Bible and in the original texts, the original stories. Same thing with Noah. They are now finding a lot of evidence in Mount Ararat and Lake Van in eastern Turkey. They're finding settlements, and they're finding names, and these names are making sense from the lineage of, pick a name. Most people will know him by Noah. It's the Noah flood story. Everybody knows that name, so I guess I'll use it. But he had other names from the earlier versions of the story. Funny thing is, it's not Noah's lineage that's on the names of these texts. It's the earlier versions lineage that were found on. There was a king's list, I guess, and one of the names, the first king that was on that list, was a descendant of, in the story they called him Ziazudra, which later on was just known as Noah. And so there's a whole story about that too. And that's actually where I'm at right now, which is crazy that, yeah. So, yeah, watching all these archaeology stories, and then later, Ancient Aliens. I watched a lot of that, and so yeah, some of these stories are pretty far out there, but I listen to them. Interesting. With that, love ya. See you in the next video.